peoples of the worldwide federated internet. What's good? Okay, so it's hard sometimes doing this podcast to adequately convey my thoughts, and there's some things I'd like to say starting this out. One of the first things I'd like to say is one, my opinions are not always right, nor do I think my opinions are always right. I believe we are allowed to have opinions. I think sometimes hearing a person's opinion out can help you more adequately formulate your own opinion. Maybe there's something in what they're saying that you didn't consider. Maybe there's an angle by which this other person looks at a situation that you didn't consider. I don't think that's something that many of us think about. I think many of us, we are very selfish in many ways. And this is many times why I say people who are more utopian in their view, in my opinion, have a skewed view of the world, because how they see people is void of the reality of people. And the reality is people are wicked. Oftentimes, when more people, more powerful people get together, the wickedness, it is um it is expanded, it is doubled, it just increases more and more. That's what happens. So I wanted to start out with that because I don't want people to listen to this podcast and come away with the impression that I think I'm right about everything, or that I think I know everything that there is to know, because I don't. I truly don't. There are many things that I'm working through when it comes to world issues. And I think it's good to work through these things. And I think it's also good to hear opinions that are not your own and don't line up with what you think. And I hear some of these opinions. I almost hate talking about this over and over again. But I thought to myself, literally, this is just how my brain works. So bear with me for a little bit. I'm probably gonna pause a lot, try to figure out what I'm gonna say next. My podcasts are not scripted. So I have a topic, something I'm thinking about, and I just turn on my camera and my mic and start recording. Normally something that I think is important. Every now and again I'll pull up an article and read some things, and even those are not scripted. I just have different articles I pulled up and some things I want to discuss concerning those articles. But anyway, I wonder if, okay, so go back to Nazi Germany. I wonder how many people said things or talked about what was going on and what they saw coming. And I wonder how many people thought, man, people are probably tired of hearing me talk about this, so I'm just going to stop. I heard a story one time. There was someone that, I want to say Ben Shapiro, interviewed this man. He's a man from California, and his great grandmother, I think it was his great grandmother or his grandmother, I can't remember which one, might have been his grandmother, was from Germany. So the way the story goes is his grandmother was talking to a friend of hers, and her friend said, hey, there's this man, you have to come hear him speak. I guess her friend liked some of the things he was saying or thought he was a polarizing figure. I don't remember the exact details. Anyway, she goes to hear this man speak. after hearing this man speak, she went to her parents and said, "I have to leave Germany." She left Germany. I don't remember if the gentleman said how long it was from that point to when she left Germany, but she left. At some point, she left. Shortly after that, the man she heard speak was Adolf Hitler. From his account, from what I can remember from the interview, he said when his grandmother heard him speak, she knew something was wrong. She knew that this man would drive her country. I don't know if she said the rest of the world, but I knew, from what I remember, she said he would drive Germany to war. Now, I wonder how many people, after she heard that speech and had enough discernment to see what she's seeing, she's just one person. I'm fairly confident that there was more than just her who saw this. But I wonder how many people like her heard him speak and thought to themselves, something is wrong. And I wonder how many of these people did nothing about it and how many of these people spoke up. Now, I'm not mentioning that to compare anything directly to that, right? So I'm not comparing anything directly to Adolf Hitler, but I do want to compare something to the phenomenon of people seeing something and being quiet. Partly because people don't think these things matter, partly because people think things will blow over, and partly because people don't think sometimes that things will go that far. So I was trying to record this yesterday. I recorded a full episode, got interrupted one time, spliced some footage, and I was going to edit that footage in. And then I thought to myself, let me come back to this, because I didn't know how to convey this thought. Because in my mind, I thought, I keep talking about the same thing and I'm tired of talking about it. And I'm sure people are probably tired of hearing about it. And then I thought to myself again, so I am not coming to you as a perfect man. And the reason I lead with that is when you make statements like the next statement I'm about to make, the first thing people think versus seeing what you're saying for the truth that's in it, they look for your faults. Remove me, forget about me, I am irrelevant. I am guided by Bible principles. Now, I have not always held correctly to these Bible principles, and one of those principles is one of the greatest commandments, loving my neighbor as myself. So I am not telling you that I am correct in the conclusion in my line of thinking. That's why I started with what I said in the beginning. Nor am I telling you that even 50% of Christians believe like me. I'm not even telling you 20%. I'm not even telling you 10%. I am my own person. And not everyone who is a believer thinks like me. And I want to make that clear, because I don't like it when people if you say you're a believer and you say, well, this is what I think, and people make what you think a monolith. Now, the Bible is true, and what the Bible says is correct and right every time. And I'm not saying that my thoughts on the Bible are infallible, because they are not. But when I look at that principle of loving my neighbor as myself, I think to myself, yes, the gospel is the number one most important thing. Number one, absolutely. If I discern that something bad is coming, would it be in the spirit of loving my neighbor as myself to just say nothing? To just let it go? If I know what's coming next? If I truly love my neighbor as myself, can I do that? These are my thoughts. And this is why I started this podcast. And this is why I talk about the issues that I talk about, because, again, I do not have some special knowledge from God. I do not have some special word from God. I've not heard an audible voice. I don't want to get I try my best, and I know this is not my Bible podcast. This is my other podcast. I try my best not to be too religious in how I approach situations like this. And this is what I mean by that. I'm not talking about religion in the sense of true religion, as the Bible points out, I believe in the book of James. I'm talking about the religiosity of the world and what people do with this religiosity is they say certain things and they make certain, assertions. God told me this. God told me this. I got a special word from God. I don't have any special word. God did not speak to me audibly. This is something that is on my mind, guided by the biblical principle of loving my neighbor as myself. All right, now let's get to this topic. Mandatory vaccinations and the pressure that is being applied when it comes to vaccinations. I'm going to read you. This is a tweet that someone posted on a public forum or a group chat that I'm in. And this tweet is from a gentleman named Doug Little. I have no idea who he is. Maybe he's somebody important, somebody famous, somebody, I don't know. I think he's from Canada, if I'm not mistaken. But I just want to read you the tweet because this is the sentiment that's on many people's minds. And I'm going to point out to you what I believe is the problem with this and where it leads. So this man says, "My position is we must make the lives of the unvaccinated a total misery and just keep escalating the exclusions until we crush the resistance and break their spirit in order to force compliance, and so they learn not to resist government mandates." That is, to me, arguably one of the most wild statements and outlandish statements. And this is the problem. The spirit of that attitude, the spirit of that statement, in my opinion, again, this is purely opinion, but I believe my opinion has some logical insight. That attitude is the exact attitude and sentiment that was held by people who supported the Nazi Party in Germany. I'm not saying clearly it was based around other ideas, but I'm just saying the sentiment, the spirit of that attitude, the government has said, has decreed, you must do. This is my problem, and this is what I believe. This is where I believe this ultimately leads. But I'm gonna back up and explain what I think the problem with this is. The problem with that is, where does government mandates end when it comes to your personal choice? Now, there's a difference. There is a difference between something like, let's say, decisions on speed on the highway, or decisions about what building is placed where within city limits, right? There's a place for centralized government and government mandates. I am not an anarchist. I am not anti-government. I think the founders of the United States had it right. I think the way they viewed government was exactly how it should be viewed. I believe it was Thomas Paine. I can't remember which book he said it in. I can see the book in my head because I have it in my library. And he said government was at best, I believe, this is a paraphrase, so it's not exactly as how he said it, but I think he said government at best is a necessary evil. But I think people see government as just a necessity, not a necessary evil. It's one of those things where we want it, but we want it tamed. We don't want it with too much control. Because what happens when you give, and somebody mentioned this was days ago. I heard is a guy I follow on Instagram, and he was talking about the police and the police force, and this is what he said. And I'm gonna tie his thought into kind of how I view the government. He said, I don't just blanketly back the blue, and I agree with him. He said, the the police organizations, the organizations themselves, are soulless entities made up of individual people that make individual decisions. Now, a soulless entity doesn't care about you. It's just going to plug along and chug along and do what it does. Now, there's going to be people within that organization, individuals that make decisions. I can support individual people, but not a soulless, entityless, however he put it. I can't remember exactly how he worded it, but he was pretty much talking about just blanketly supporting an organization. This is kind of how I view the government, similar. The government is made up of individual people. Those individual people have thoughts. Those individual people have ideas. Sometimes they're correct and sometimes they're not. The organization itself is soulless, gutless, and heartless, and cares nothing for anyone. If that soulless, heartless organization is given too much power, eventually you get one centralized figure that takes over this organization, and then you have tyranny. That's how it starts. So when I hear people calling for government mandates when it comes to personal choice, I am not anti-vaccine. I have my vaccine cards. I have taken all kind of vaccinations. I was in the military. I went to some places people don't want to go. I've gotten an anthrax vaccine. How many people can say they got that? I think I was up to like booster number 5 or something like that. Who knows what was in that vaccine? Right? When I was going overseas, I had a traveling job. I was going overseas. I got all kind of vaccines because you had to keep up with your vaccinations to go to certain countries. I signed up for that job. I knew and understood what I was signing up for. So just to get you to understand, I'm not anti-vaccine. What I don't like, all right, so if I take a job that requires, okay, you're going to these such and such places, we require you to take these vaccines because of the dangers of certain diseases in these areas, I signed up for that. I agreed to that. What I don't like is having a job and a company coming back on a back end, or the government coming back on a back end and saying, okay, you have to get this vaccination. I'm not against vaccine. What I am against is forcing people to take vaccines against their will. Look, I am not a doctor. I am not one of these people who believe the coronavirus is fake. It is not fake. It is very real. 100% people have died. I know people who have people close to them who have died from the coronavirus or complications due to the coronavirus. Nobody close to me personally, but people I know and people close to them died. Now, I do know personal people personally who have had it. One of my good friends had it a couple months ago, and he was down bad for a while. He was down bad, hospitalized. He got out the hospital. He's okay now and everything. So I'm not one of these people that is like, oh, it's not real. It's fake. We need to just get over. No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, at what point do we give, where does the power grab start? At what point do we give, or at what point do we take back some of this centralized control? How much control do you want to give the central government over your own personal choices? Again, I'm not anti vax. I'm not anti government. My problem is, where does this stop? If the government can mandate that you take something that you don't want to take and inject it in your body, this is not about whether any conspiracy theories surrounding the vaccine. I think sometimes people are distracted from the real conversation and the real threat and the real problem with sidecar issues, in my opinion. Right? The- I'm not I'm not one to label anyone tinfoil hat this, or crazy person that. People have thoughts. Some of them I don't agree with. Sometimes I think people come to false conclusions because of bad information, or they are convinced that their opinion is the only opinion and 100% right. There are a lot of things I think about different information I see that may be wrong. So I try not to hold dogmatic positions on these things. I try to always rein it in and say to myself and my audience, well, here's what I think. I'm not saying this is 100% right. I'm just saying I see X, Y, and Z, and here's a possibility, but I don't have any 100% proof. All I have is these breadcrumbs that may lead to this. I don't know that to be true. But I think sometimes when we focus on all of these other conspiracy theories surrounding the vaccine, you distract from the real issue. And here's the real issue: what gives any government the right to tell you what to do with your own personal body? Now, I know in the past, I can't remember the Supreme Court ruling, and I can't remember how many years ago. I don't know if it was with smallpox or what vaccination it was, but there was a man somewhere in the Midwest who I believe was forced to get a vaccine. He was abstaining. I do not believe that was a correct constitutional ruling. Now, again, I know a lot of people will say, you're not a judge, you're not a lawyer, you don't have the legal training. Who are you to say that this was a right or wrong decision? All I'm saying is, no matter what the danger is, if the government has the right to tell you what to do with your own body, you are no longer a citizen. You are, in fact, a slave that does not even have autonomy over your own body. Now, I'm not going to say that this is an absolute, and here's what I mean. Yeah, you have the right to do I believe you should have the right to make decisions for your own body. Now, I'm a believer. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm a believer. But I think some of the laws we have concerning drugs probably lean too much toward government control, and I would lean more toward liberty. And I am not an advocate of drug use. I am personally against it. There are some things that the government should not get involved in, and there are some things that the government should get involved in, and that's what a balance is. How do we parse out this balance? It's not easy. I can easily sit here and Monday morning quarterback and say I have all the answers. I don't have all the answers. And I'm not telling you I have all the answers, but what I am telling you is I see the danger in too much centralized control given to a centralized government. I see a danger in relinquishing rights because of fear. I've realized that if the government can scare you into giving away rights, it can scare you into slavery. It's exactly how that happens. You can look time and time again. You can look at China. You can look at North Korea. You can look at Cuba. You can look at Venezuela. You can look at Russia. We can go on and on with the countries that were seemingly free. I'm not going to say they weren't constructed exactly like the United States, but they were seemingly free and just devolved into totalitarian authoritarianism very quickly, where people have no choice over anything they do. And this is the problem. And this is why I say I don't have all the answers. There's got to be a balance. But definitely when it comes to this, it's non-negotiable for me. No government, no entity should have any right to tell you what to put into your body. Here's the thing. I'm confused. And this is why I'm confused. They say this is about health and it's about the greater good. And this is where I think the soulless, heartless entity comment comes into play. I'm not saying that there's some nefarious motive behind all of this. I'm not saying that there's some nefarious plan to do X, Y, or Z. That's why this is happening or that's why that's happening. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is what sometimes happens is you get this soulless, heartless, thoughtless entity. It's almost like these things can almost be like living, breathing organisms, right? Talking about the government, where it just grows and grows and grows naturally. And if it's untamed and uncontrolled, it will overtake everything. So there's got to be some control. There's got to be some pruning. We can't just let it grow wild. Every now and again, there's some things we need to cut off. And if the government is really concerned about health, again, this is not any kind of medical advice. I am no doctor. I am no physician. I'm just taking information that I see from the CDC and from different medical organizations, and I'm making a personal assessment. When I see the things surrounding this pandemic that we've had the last it's almost 2 years. That's what's crazy, is it's almost 2 years that this has been going on. I've never seen such a panic. Now, and I want to do something for you. I'm going to read the definition of pandemic because now jokingly, and I've jokingly said scamdemic or plandemic, but pandemic means occurring over a wide geographic area, such as multiple countries or continents, and typically affecting a significant proportion of the population. Pandemic is seen as such a scary word, and it shouldn't necessarily be that way. If the common cold were to spread all over the world at a certain time of year, if the flu were to go around and spread all over the world at a certain time of year, that would be a pandemic. Doesn't mean people are dying, right? So is the coronavirus a pandemic by the dictionary, by the definition of that word? It absolutely is a pandemic. But how we've been conditioned to view a pandemic is where I think everything has gone just demonstrably wrong, like completely out of control. Okay, so when I look at all these metrics, go to the CDC's website, look at the coronavirus deaths, the different things surrounding that. What I think to myself is, if this is really about health, why is none of these health organizations addressing the things that we can actually do to maybe mitigate this coronavirus? I'll give you an example. If I'm leading the CDC, me personally, this would be my first order of business. If I really wanted to help people, and again, this goes back to the principle of loving my neighbor as myself. Vaccinations have been great throughout history. Now, I don't like the fact that vaccine companies can't be sued. I don't like that. They have no liability for adverse effects of their vaccinations. Now, I'm not saying it should just be the Wild West and people should just be able to, willy nilly sue. I'm not saying that, but there's no liability, right? So there's almost no responsibility on the vaccine manufacturers. They can just do whatever. There can be all kind of adverse effects that they could probably mitigate with a little more research, but they don't have to because there's no liability. So yeah, we could probably, adjust this or do something where this adverse effect wouldn't be there, but we don't have to. There's a problem with that. But if I am head of the CDC, head of the NIH, here would be what I would say. I would come out to the American people in the world and I would say, look, this pandemic is going to kill some people, but some of these deaths can be avoided. Let me tell you one of the biggest things you can do to avoid some of these deaths. We have a huge obesity problem. I will put out the body mass index chart. It's not perfect. People's bodies are different, but it's a general rule that you could pretty much go by to see if you're overweight. If you're overweight, it's a problem. If you're obese, it is a huge problem. The first thing we can do to tackle some of these coronavirus deaths is we need to get out and exercise. We need to watch our diets. We need to live healthier lifestyles. Why is that not encouraged? Why is the first go-to, we will force you to inject something into your body and this is going to magically fix all of our problems? Here's a question for you. Has vaccinations eliminated the flu? How long's the flu been around? I don't like the fact that they're selling vaccinations as the end all be all fix. This thing is going to go away and be eradicated. The flu's not eradicated. So if the flu couldn't be eradicated, what makes me believe with an experimental vaccination method that is not proven? I'm not against vaccines. Again, this is not me being against vaccines. I don't like the idea of the government believing that it has the right, this soulless, heartless, thoughtless organization thinks that it has the right to tell me what to inject into my own body. I don't like that. And the thing about that is, if you give that inch, the next yard that's taken will have you in shackles. And as hyperbolic as that might seem, rest assured, that's exactly where this leads. Y'all know what it is. Stay frosty, people.